watching the Dawgs Show. Another new episode is coming up tonight.
It's the Dawgs Show. It's the Dawgs Show. It's the Dawgs Show.
You're listening to the one and only Dawgs Show. Your hosts, Troup Brenson and Smooch Moncrief.
Just two dudes talking Georgia football.
That's right.
Welcome, dog fans, to the one and only Dawgs Show with Troup and Smooch and special guest, Coach Hayes.
Finally.
Hey guys, how y'all
that
doing?
was smooth. That was perfect, Coach. How are you?
We
Good.
are so good because we're just a couple days away from what we prepared for the whole season, for our whole existence as Georgia Bulldog fans is about, really. And that is about elimination games and reaching the pinnacle of the sport. And welcome, dog fans. We are so happy you are here, and we're so excited. We've been kind of holding ourselves back, and I mean, we know you guys are reading everything you can read and watching everything you can see to get yourself prepared for this next Tuesday night, Wednesday. A lot of games on Wednesday. You watched some of these bowl games that really didn't matter at all, but it was still football. But
Yeah.
now, finally, Smooch, Coach, we're here, and it seems like a culmination, even though this is just the first round for Georgia. But it's a culmination of a long off season, then a season that went by in warp speed.
Yeah.
And here we are. These are our elimination games. And it's where everything hinges on these ball games right now. You guys know that.
Troup, I will tell you this. I have done my best to watch every single postseason game there was. I've tried. I haven't gotten them all, but I've gotten most of them. And I will tell you, I have seen 7 teams that could beat Indiana play in just the last few days. And that's the reason some of these games have been much more competitive. There were some real bangers on last night. And that's the type of thing I like. The great thing about college football, this doesn't hold true anywhere else. You don't find this in the NFL. You don't find this in other sports, is that you don't have to be the top of the food chain if you're equally matched. It makes for entertaining football. And college football is one of the few sports that can offer that. And we're seeing that right now. It's a shame the playoff committee couldn't get competitive teams together, but it's going to get a lot more competitive going forward, Coach.
Yes.
Well, it's a much-needed time right now for Georgia, too, because we needed the rest after this sort of a labyrinth of a season. I honestly, to tell you the truth, I think Coach Kirby Smart owes being owed kudos because I think this is one of his most well-coached years ever.
Without a doubt.
With it being, an unprecedented season of those 12 games that we just went through and to be SEC champs. Honestly, I feel almost to the point of just that feeling of reaching a pinnacle point by being SEC champs right now versus where we were last year. But, uniquely, it's like the tale of two seasons if you think about it. It feels like we've played this, season on the front end, get the SEC championship, sort of cap that off. We put a pin in it. We move over here now to these 3 games that we're about to play, hopefully, going forward. And you're right. Every play, everything matters. And to me, when you have these teams lined up the way they are set up in the brackets, I think – to me, uniquely, every one of them brings their own design. And to me, the way that it's built for us to have some really good games going forward. Notre Dame and Georgia is no exception. They've got a history of 3 games in the past. Georgia's 3-0 against them. But if you think about it, every game, very close, close-knit ball games that we've played against them. So I'm ready for a dogfight with these guys coming up this week.
Yes, a dogfight. Dogs have been prepared for a fight each and every game. And the games have kind of lended to that ability as Georgia's been a slow starting team for most of the season. And so they needed to fight. But I think you folks guessed what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a lot about Gunner Stockton, a lot about the other games that are going on. But most of all, we're going to talk about the matchup, the Georgia Bulldogs against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And I just want to let you Irish fans know that the time for honoring yourself is come to an end. Smooch, hit that countdown to kickoff.
I love it. Countdown to kickoff, baby.
So
listen
good.
to the bell. Listen to the bell, Notre Dame. It tolls for thee.
And we love the countdown to kickoff, and we've been doing this all season. And Notre Dame, you're up next. And it's been a fun story for you guys, and we think you are a good team.
Yeah.
And I guess a lot of it has to do with what you follow on social media. And because there's so much content out there, and people are starved for content. And so there's always going to be something out there. And so the narratives are pushed one way or another. And we know this. I mentioned it, Smooch, in the pre-show, that as a sports fan, you know that the media loves to build you up just to tear you down. And if they're going to tear you down, they got to have somebody's got to be a foil. You know, it's got to be a team that Notre Dame is a perpetual foil. And maybe I'm giving them too much credit to say they're a foil because they are crowned as it's their time or their year after year. And it's a running joke at this point. This might be a little bit different Notre Dame team. I think they're yoked a little bit differently, and they're a little tougher team, and I like their coaching staff.
Yes, I love the coach.
But it is, and so they are a team that is not just a paper team, and so they do present Georgia with some problems, some issues, just like all teams do. But at this point, you can't take any team for granted. It doesn't matter. You know, you see what happens when you're not ultimately prepared. I think Georgia will be, so that's not anything to talk about. But the national narrative, Smooch, has definitely been trending towards, or from the start, I guess, Notre Dame is a national championship quality team that could win a national championship, and maybe should beat Georgia.
Yeah, so you can set your watch by the media overrating Notre Dame every year. You know, it's just going to happen. There is a romanticism with the former greatness of Notre Dame. I would caution Georgia fans about being dismissive of this particular Notre Dame team. And I'm not talking strictly about the Notre Dame talent. I'm not impressed with their schedule. I'm not impressed with what they've done on the field per se. I'm impressed with Marcus Freeman. I'm impressed with that man as just a leader of men. And I know what happens when you get a guy that can lead men in a team, and the team has a storied and like we said, they have a pass from the media, and they have a storied franchise. And so I think that this team is, are they overhyped? Absolutely. Is the media in love with the possibility of celebrating another Notre Dame national championship?
Oh, yes,
absolutely they are. But can this team catch Georgia with their pants down? Absolutely they can. And so that's kind of where we are, Coach, going forward.
Well, to segue the national media, if there's anything to demise, it's always going to be the University of Georgia to figure out a way to put us down on the ground and sort of hold us down and not let us back up. It seems like we're always the team to scapegoat that, especially with the national media. Notre Dame is, to me, the one that's always – every year I'm always just contemplating how I feel about them. The one thing that I see, and I have to agree with you, Smooch, is that they have a good head coach and Coach Freeman. I think he's a player's coach. And to me, this team this year, watching them on film, even though their schedule after their debacle at home against Northern Illinois in the second game of the season, when they're playing teams like Purdue and the Naval Academy and Army, and to their benefit, Army and Navy had a really good program this year. They did really good, played very well. But if you look at their total schedule, to me, it was just not very competitive. The way I look at it is I went back to look at USC and who would be considered to be one of their major rivals if you think about storied past of who they've played over the years, as well as obviously their first playoff game against Indiana. I felt like that would be the best competition for me to look at and to be able to see what their strengths and weaknesses are. But, honestly, I look at them from a defensive side, I look at them from an offensive side, and they carry a very similar personality to what we do as well, and their schematics, even though a little bit different. I think Coach Freeman's got that team going in the right direction, and they're catching us at a good time as well because they're hot, just coming off their playoff win. We've come off the SEC championship. We've had almost a full month to prepare, and to me, it's going to be a very good clash in that first round of Sugar Bowl in New Orleans this coming Wednesday.
And there is some doubt. Georgia's created some doubt by the up and down nature that they played. And then the injury to Carson Beck, and you got Gunnar Stockton, the virtual unknown. And it's still, me and Smooch talked about it last week. It's more, we have a lot of optimism and hope, and we are light on evidence in terms of what Gunnar Stockton, his ceiling. we have a good feeling about where that's going to take this Georgia team. But you can understand to a degree why the national media, with Notre Dame being on the other side of it, why they would go this route. And Smooch has prepared a little montage of just what some of those folks were saying, and we want you guys to check it out.
Here you go. This is not all of them. This is all I could fit into 1 minute, so here we go.
Notre Dame is going to beat Georgia. I think the edge has got to be Notre Dame, Kev.
I don't know where the decided advantage is for Georgia.
I picked Notre Dame over Georgia.
This is a bad draw for Georgia.
That Notre Dame could be college football's most complete team.
They can run the football. They can shut down your passing game.
This is not who Kirby Smart wants to play in this game.
The combination of Riley Leonard's legs and Jeremiah Love is incredible.
Notre Dame has a better running back room.
I think Notre Dame is a legitimate national title contender.
Well, Georgia's Georgia, and their D-line is nowhere near as good as it's been.
Georgia's receivers are not the usual suspects.
Notre Dame has the better quarterback.
Georgia doesn't have their starting quarterback. This matchup is a bad one for Georgia.
They're favored against Georgia in that game in New Orleans.
Just don't match up well versus Notre Dame. You got to feel really good if you're a Fighting Irish fan.
I don't know where Georgia's edge is.
Just like Notre Dame is about to beat the piss out of Georgia in New Orleans.
It was a little bit, yeah. You understand there's the initial prognosticator who came out from CBS Sports. He's a guy just trying to make a name for himself, going to say something. You can throw stuff against the wall. And there's a reason to believe, like we just mentioned, that Georgia could be vulnerable. Could be vulnerable. Just the nature of what we've seen this year. But you've also seen Georgia, like we said, just refuse to blink in so many of these games. And it doesn't matter what the circumstances were or how they got to that circumstance. Georgia is a team that's built ready to fight, and they could be coming together health-wise and just as a team at the right point. And that's optimism as a Georgia fan, of course. But I think that actually Notre Dame is a perfect opponent for Georgia to show you, because they're just like a baseline team. I mean, Notre Dame's not spectacular in any area. No, they're not. I mean, if you look at their season, you could say, well, they did this great, and Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard, blah, blah, in their defense. No. They haven't played the marquee teams that would really let them shine to show you what their ceiling was.
That's good.
But they're a really good baseline team for Georgia to come out and to identify themselves in the playoffs going forward.
Yeah, I used to have a football coach that said you have no idea what's inside of a tea bag until you put it in hot water. You have no idea what's inside of it, right? We have no idea what Notre Dame's made out of because they really just haven't been stretched. They forgot to show up against Northern Illinois, but they have not been stretched and battle tested. And that would be the absolute, that would have me shaking in my boots as a Notre Dame fan, because Georgia has not played a complete game. I mean, maybe a Texas game, but Georgia, it's possible Georgia hasn't put it together for 4 quarters a single time this year, and they still won 10 games in the SEC and won the SEC title. That is insane. The idea that you cannot play your best game and ever win in the SEC is kind of a reach. I think to Coach's point earlier, what Kirby Smart has done with this team this year in terms of consistency, I think that all of those battles, I do not consider 8 overtimes at Georgia Tech to be this embarrassing blemish on their season. It is a team that came into a game against a rival, found itself on the ropes, and like a champion figured out how to get up off the mat. Notre Dame doesn't have that moment. And you're telling me the first time you're going to discover whether you've got that in you or not is against the Georgia Bulldogs in a primetime game? Coach, I just don't see it.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to see because, going back to your little monologue, the montage there of all the people talking about what, Notre Dame was going to do to Georgia. I mean, they're playing with house money. They've got nothing to lose with those statements that they're throwing out there, because if something happens and they step up and it comes to be a blow of, well, they win by a point or two and it goes the other way from the previous game, they look like just geniuses on the other side. But then we go out there and we take care of business like we should, and we beat them by a touchdown or beat them by 10 points. And all of a sudden now all those people, you don't hear about them anymore. It's crickets. That's the reason why it drives me nuts. They're saying stuff for clicks. They're saying stuff to bring other people in because, like I said, they're playing with house money. They have nothing to lose in that situation. My mentality is just to go out there and you got to take it one game at a time, but it even comes down to one quarter at a time, one play at a time for everything that you're doing, because there's such a different dynamic of what we're about to witness on the field this Wednesday versus what we have watched and what has transpired for the last 4 months. And that's what's so, I think, exciting for Georgia Bulldog fans right now, because we're not sure exactly what we're going to see. Are we going to see a Gunnar Stockton that played like he did against Florida State against that debacle situation? But as far as like how he played, he did a really good job, sound job of playing. What he did in the Texas SEC championship once he came in. So there's a lot of different feelings that we have towards Gunnar Stockton right now, but it's just like I said, it's in an unheard territory that we haven't seen yet. And for him to be able to go out on the grand stage against Notre Dame, I think really says a lot about his character and a lot about what the team feels in regards to his play and how I think we're going to, be successful with our play on Wednesday against Notre Dame.
I love the word exciting there, Troup.
The unknown is exciting.
Yes.
But there is not total unknown about Gunnar Stockton. Did you have you had some kind of graphic that let you know Gunnar's background, even in just his high school? He's got some accolades,
right?
And he's shown he can do it in a multitude of ways and at a high level. Yeah. So that unknown is an exciting piece, and just hearing his teammates talk about him lets you think that maybe he could get there. Maybe this is the first step to him getting back to that.
Right. And so if you the original impetus for this show actually probably started it pretty much came out of some conversations Troup and I were having about Gunnar Stockton when he was in high school, because the tape is there. Now you can talk about the competition level, which is of course and his measurables, but the tape is just there. So I put together a little compilation of his just high school stats, and I understand this isn't college, but here's what we have to go on. His 4-year career in high school, 13,652 yards passing. That is a state record. That is Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, or who he bested with those. 177 passing touchdowns, another state record. I want to say this briefly before I move on to rushing. His senior year, 55 touchdowns to 1 interception. You can also throw in 15 more rushing touchdowns and 0 fumbles his senior year for 70 touchdowns to 1 interception his senior year of high school. Rushing, career rushing, 4,372 yards. That is a 7.2 yards per carry clip for those of you playing the home game. 77 rushing touchdowns, also a state record. All-purpose yards just under 20,000 at 18,024, also a state record, and a total 254 TDs. Now, there's been high school students that put up great numbers that disappeared after high school, but there's also been guys that put up numbers like this that went on to great things, Coach.
Mike Davis is a good friend of mine, coached at Calhoun for a long period of time. It's actually Hal Lamb's brother-in-law, and he went up to take over Raven County, Gunnar's last 2 years up there. And I heard through hearsay and different people talking and Mike's a good guy, and I trust his judgment, I trust his word and a lot of things he says. But he said Gunner's the guy you want to have with the football anytime, any given situation where you need something to happen. He said, I trust that kid with my life. And that's something that I think kind of portrays what you look at, even what Nick Saban said. I mean, we've heard obviously the testimonials of a lot of the kids this week have talked about just what he brings chemistry-wise, how he just comes with the blue-collar mentality, the lunch pail mentality. He's not in it for the glimmer and glam. And honestly, I know sometimes that may feel like a little sub-punches under the belt to Carson Beck. But still, though, it's kind of nice to know that you've got that kind of kid coming in and is going to do everything he can to help his team be successful and win ball games. But, listening to Coach Davis talk about Gunnar, and what I wanted back to circle back around is what Coach Saban said about him. Coach Saban, talked about how he had watched him grow up from middle school up, really liked Gunnar Stockton's play, actually recruited him highly as well, spoke very high on Gunnar Stockton. So it's good when you hear people who you feel like a good critique from a recruiting standpoint, and kids that have actually, been coached by coaches that to say those things about those kids. They wouldn't, just ramble on about nothing, just, for fluff. I think it's legit what we're hearing about him, and I think he brings that card to the table, that sort of moxie that we want to see in our QB1 going into this Notre Dame game.
And I'll say that all of those glowing reports and all the accolades from the past and, the support from his teammates and all the feel-good stuff would disappear really quickly if he has a subpar game next or in a couple of days. And it won't really tell you what he can be next season, but it'll change that, I guess, how Georgia fans, because the Georgia fans,
it changed the casual narrative in a hurry. Yeah.
It will, because fans are always looking for what's next, and it'll move quickly on to Puglisi and Rashada if he doesn't put up, if he doesn't lead Georgia to a victory. But they really want to. People want to be on the Gunnar Stockton train because it's a good story, and he feels like salt of the earth kind of guy who's in the film room and who is not going to leave any stone unturned, which should lend itself perfectly to what this Georgia culture and Georgia program promotes, being prepared and being ready to take the next step, and that's what he feels like. He's a guy who's got abilities, and they are going to try to mold this team in the limited time they've had, but 3 weeks is still better than 7 days to his abilities. And I trust this coaching staff, and I trust this team. I think this team has got a great roster. I know they do, and I trust them to do what they need to do to help Gunnar and to be a complimentary piece wherever they need everybody doing their job. Yeah. I think that's something that kind of galvanizes a team when you have an injury where there was a lot of weight on Carson Beck this year and pressure on him, and people were looking at him. It's the first time really I can remember that the whole team's success seemed to hinge on how good Carson Beck was, and
the quarterback position period.
It did, and that felt a little different from a Georgia perspective. And I think Gunnar Stockton gets back to what Georgia does best.
Yeah. What do you think, Coach?
That's what I was going to say going forward. I'm going to say this. I was not the biggest Gunnar Stockton fan because looking at his mechanics, I had it programmed in my mind. You have someone as a QB1 that has to be a good processor, one that's going to throw the ball down the field, that has sort of epitomized what we've seen from Carson Beck, being able to layer throws, throw over 3 deep strata, to be able to throw the vertical ball when needed, just to be a good processor of the game, to be able to read through 3 and 4 reads in a 4-route progression or even a 5-route progression. And Gunnar, taking so long to line up and throw, not to say that he doesn't have strong arms, strong legs, but I'm going to tell you this, what made me a believer, honestly, from a coach's perspective, seeing the sideline and hearing kids talk, when he took the football down after they looked like they were going to run flood pass rollout and he had to pull the ball down and he ran over that kid. I say he ran over him, but he lowered his shoulder. There wasn't,
he delivered a hit.
He delivered the blow. And by God, I watched that whole sideline just go crazy.
Erupt.
And I saw, and to me, that kind of comes back to all the things I'm hearing on the background of what these kids are saying about Gunnar and what he's trying to do. That, to me, now has made me a bigger believer in what he can do and what he can produce on the field for Georgia, because I do agree now you've got a surrounding cast that we're looking that's going to up their play because they know what they've got in 14 behind them, as he calls, as he's at the helm of the team, So that's just something that's very special, and I think brings a lot of moxie to the table for the program.
Yeah, moxie. I think that's where I come down on it. It's some players, it's hard to put your finger on what it is they do better, especially if you put them in watch workouts. Sometimes workouts can mess your brain up because one of these players is a leader and one of them isn't. And he has that. Well, we always say the it factor. He just seems to have it. And I always look when your quarterback gets hit a touch late or shoved out of bounds by somebody. How does the rest of the team react when that happens? And I think you shove Gunnar late into the sidelines, and it's going to be a bad day for whoever shoved him. The team has his back. They've bought whatever it is he's selling. They've bought into it. Troup.
Well, it's more because we talked about it last week. Gunnar Stockton is a football player. He's one of us. is what the team feels like. He's not separated himself. He's not on the other side of the fence. He's not on the stage. He's one of us, and he'll do everything that we do. He'll throw a block. He'll deliver a hit. He'll do whatever's necessary. He's a football player.
Drive his granddad's F-150.
Dude, they appreciate that. You appreciate that when you're on the football field, a quarterback who is willing to sacrifice himself and who doesn't hold himself into a different level than, we see that. We've seen it over and over and over again. But let's talk a little bit about something and we really look at these teams. Before we talk about what Georgia needs to do and Coach Smooch, I want you guys to think about what problems does Notre Dame present legitimately that is going to give Georgia issues? And you can say what they've done all year long, okay, but it's hard not to, that's what we've seen. But in terms of this game and what we expect Georgia to be able to do and what we expect Notre Dame to try to do, what can they do that's going to present problems for Georgia?
Well, I'm going to answer within the parameters of the media narrative. That's how I'll answer it. I think if both teams show up and play 90% or better, the game's not in question. However, that ain't been the Dawgs' way all year this year. So I think that Notre Dame, they run the ball. They've got a guy that can really pick them up and put them down at tailback, and they've got a mobile quarterback. Now, when you put all those together, those are not things Georgia has shined with this year. I'm not saying that Notre Dame has Jalen Milroe under center, but I'm just saying that if you take what has Georgia had problems with, well, they haven't been great again in certain situations against this running scheme. They haven't been great against a mobile quarterback. Well, they've got both of those. So you can say, all right, Notre Dame poses that problem. On defense, they are assignment based. I've probably watched 3 Notre Dame games in the last few days, kind of trying to see how exactly their style of play will translate to the SEC. I don't know on defense. I will tell you on offense, I've watched them run. They got players that can run away from people. That's speed never has a bad day, as they say. They've got some speed. And so I think that if they can make this game, they've got to make it ugly. They've got to make it a running game, and they've got to be better at it than Georgia. And I think that's where they're very confident in their ability to do that. But then again, so was Michigan a couple of years ago. So I think that's kind of where we are, Coach. I do have some real flashbacks to Stetson Bennett against Michigan. There's some parallels that I really can't escape right here.
Yeah, when you look at Jeremiah Love, you look at Riley Leonard, you even think Jadarian Price is their next leading rusher. I think it's going to come down to, I know what we're going to try to do in stopping the run. That's something that's got to be effective. If we are going to bring exotic blitzes, we've got to get home against Riley Leonard. We can't let him scoot around back there. And if we don't give home and extend the time in the pocket, that means we're covering for longer periods of time. And Bo Collins and I believe it's Jordan Faison, number 5, number 6, they're 2 receivers. They can get open, and we have shown if we have to extend windows and we're in there in that 3.5 to 4 second window, receivers can get open on us if we don't get home. That's the biggest issue for me, is that if we're not getting home on any of our 5 and 6 man pressures, that could cause a lot of stress to our DBs, and I could see Notre Dame having some success. But we have got to shut down their running game. They're wanting to establish the line of scrimmage just like we will establish the line of scrimmage, like we have to do as well, which is something that's kind of an oddity this year. I won't go too far into the weeds with that because we're talking about Georgia right now and what could be a weakness for them. I'm just looking at it from the standpoint that just like it's been all year long, if we can stop the run and we isolate them and make them more one-dimensional, we've got to get home on third downs, and we've got to get off the field on third. And if it's 3rd and 5 or longer, we have got to get off the field. We've got to have a higher percentage to get off the field. We've been not doing that very well here lately. We're letting somebody slip out, or like a Riley Leonard get out on the edge and we miss a tackle, and then he's going for 7 or 8 yards and extends drives and extends plays. And when you do that, that's so frustrating for a defense. Offensively, we can't allow Notre Dame to to stop our running game. We have got to establish. I think Frazier and ETN right now are a very good duo combo. I talked about with Roderick Robinson being healthy, God love him. We hear about his situation this week.
Yeah.
Whatever happens with that, so be it. But Cash Jones is shown to be effective out of the backfield. But we have got to establish a running game. If they slow down our running game and we're not running the ball very well, that could set us up to be one-dimensional. And as you know, Gunner in that situation, that's not something I think that complements his game very well right now. We need to have a good running game, not just Gunner running it, but with ETN and Nate going in there together and establishing a good line of scrimmage. If we don't do that, that could be something that helps Notre Dame on the defensive side of the ball as well.
So Coach, and I know you've watched more film of both teams really than we have. Do you see Notre Dame being able to effectively run the ball against this Georgia team? I mean, just how you feel. It doesn't have to be based on anything about other than what you've seen and what you feel.
To me, I think we can. I think there's something that's there that really presents itself when you look at USC and Indiana. The last two teams they played at the end of the season, to me, which was to me more of a rivalry game when they played them out there at the Coliseum, and then as well as playing Indiana at home in South Bend. I noticed they've got a pretty big line of scrimmage now. Riley Miles, the kid that got hurt, their big nose tackle 99, him going down hurts them interior. So that's another thing that I think that helps us to establish the running game a little bit better. I think with him being gone, he was their biggest body. He played a 4-eye, played the inside 3, played some nose some too. But when Notre Dame plays more of a 4-3 concept, they rotate in a nickel for what they call their rover, which is like a sound linebacker.
Okay.
They also have another player called the Viper, which is like their jack, like our jack in our defense. He's a stand-up outside linebacker type that plays defensive end. But when they're in run-down situations, they really do look 4-3 cover 2 or look 4-3 2-man. They do love to bring exotic blitzes. They'll go cover 1. But when they do, they're not as disciplined as us in gap integrity. And that's something I think if we can catch them in right blitz techniques, we can gash them there. So to answer your question, I do think we are going to be able to establish the line of scrimmage with our run game. I think we can move their defensive line very well, because if there's one thing that I think we have gotten more consistent at, especially since Tennessee game, really, when Monroe Freeling came in for Ernest Green, I really do think our offensive line got more consistent, and I see that consistency still building week in and week out. So I think that's what's going to help us establish the line of scrimmage over them. It's kind of odd. It's amazingly odd how equally I feel like we are on both sides. But as to what Smooch said a while ago, comparison-wise, looking at their strength of schedule and who they've played, it's hard to compare. They haven't played the team speed that they have in us. They haven't played the bigs, but not only being big, but we're fast. There's a big difference in what we're going to be able to do. It's all in the matter of being fundamentally sound in doing the right things. When we hit the right gap and we pressure, we make tackles. We don't miss, and we put ourselves in position when we do run the football, we're effective. We hit those holes and we establish a good running game, and get those 6 and 7 and 8 yard gashers. And eventually, as Coach Smart likes to say, you keep chopping, then eventually it's going to be gashing them for 20 to explosive runs that you want to see, and then that just opens up your entire playbook for what Gunner can do in helping around that running game.
Well, I feel that way too. I feel like Georgia's offensive front is not a good matchup for Notre Dame size wise and skill wise either. They're going to have to commit some more people, and they're going to have some runs and some different. I mean, they can't. They're not just going to be able to go toe to toe with Georgia. So I feel good about Georgia opening up space. I'm really wondering about. I think Georgia's going to run the ball, and so that's offensively that's great. I'm wondering if their running game, how that matches up against Georgia's defensive front seven. Because Georgia, you got to think that as they have game plan for this Notre Dame team, they are obviously looking at the run and looking at the quarterback being able to run the ball. And so Georgia is hyper focused on that. Is there a avenue for Notre Dame to be able to be successful running the ball to dictate this game to Georgia?
Well, they sure as hell going to try, I know, because they feel very confident in what Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love can do. With Riley having to hand off and not have to take as many hits, the more positive plays they can have, they're definitely going to try that. Where I see there probably being an issue is at left tackle. Notre Dame has a freshman that plays at left tackle, and he's going to be lined up against Mikael Williams a lot.
Not good.
And so that's what I'm saying. When I saw him against Indiana, he held his own, but their interior two guys they're better players for Indiana defensively. Their outside guy, their 5, was not as good, or their edge was not as good against USC. That's the reason why I wanted to go back and look at USC. USC did a lot of exotic things against him as well, and he had a little bit of a hard time picking stuff up as well there too. So I'm going to look at that matchup with that freshman left tackle against Mikael or whoever's lined up against him. I do think they're going to try and establish it, but I feel like they just haven't seen our style and speed, because we're going to hold gaps up and we're going to try to make him, he's going to have to make a decision one way or the other, and our linebackers are going to be flying to the football. Is if our defensive line can do some of the similar things they did against Texas in the SEC championship game, where you've got guys holding their gap integrity, people making swim moves, all that kind of stuff that we saw against Texas, I see it being a long night for Notre Dame trying to run the football. Will we see them pop a couple of plays? Sure, that's football. But I think you minimize that by being effective to make them, decide to say, well, we can't trust our run game here to get us 5 or 6 yards. We're going to have to start throwing it, and now they can pin their ears back after ass.
We've seen that recently, because Texas has been able to run the ball against everybody.
Yes.
And they abandoned it rather quickly when Georgia kept stoning them, and they had that was a big indicator in those games. And what Georgia was able to do defensively is they could not run the ball, and and then Georgia's defense was able to pin the ears back, and especially when a team was predictable. And even in Texas has an offense that should be able to, if one thing's not working, we should be able to throw the ball. But Georgia said, no. This is not any other team you've been playing. Georgia has the ability and the athlete, Smooch, to, if you're one-dimensional and they can make you one-dimensional, when is that ever a successful game plan, or how does that ever turn into success against the Georgia Bulldogs?
Never is the short answer. I'm listening to this, and I've listened to a bunch of Notre Dame podcasts, Georgia podcasts, and I keep getting the same thing. The strategy for both teams is we're going to make that guy beat us with his arm. That's the strategy.
Smooch, they assume Notre Dame fans and pundits assume that they're going to be able to run the ball against Georgia.
They just assume they're going to be able to do it. But once you have said, think about this. Here's how I look at it. It's very simple. You have said, okay, we're going to meet in the schoolyard and fight it out, but we're only going to trade body blows. We're just going to punch each other to the gut. Do you really want to be in a gut punching contest with the Georgia Bulldogs? You just don't have the bodies at Notre Dame to do that for 4 quarters. If this stays our running game against theirs, I like Georgia's chances against anybody. I love it against Notre Dame, because 4 quarters of body blows is going to destroy another team. So until a team, if Georgia has to become one-dimensional because of some fumbles, some turnovers, some missed assignments, that's a different thing. But if both teams have their way, and this is a game in the trenches, a game of body blows, a game of establishing the line of scrimmage, our best and their best, they may be comparable in some way, but they're not comparable for 4 quarters, because we can just keep running them out there.
And the 2 assumptions that I'm just kind of dumbfounded, because we watched a lot of football and we've seen Georgia play over the years, and we know what they're about, is Notre Dame. And this is the funny part of it, when we're kind of smirking and hearing what they have to say. They assume that they're going to be able to run the ball because they're going to look at some game that Georgia allowed some guys to run the ball in.
Yeah.
And well, you know what Georgia's record is in elimination games? Anyway. And
go watch the Texas game. Put away whatever. I don't know. Put away Mississippi State and go watch Texas game.
They also assume that their defense is better than Georgia's.
Yeah.
They go, our defense is fast. Our defense is deep. We get, and I've heard that over and over, that their defense, because people keep telling them that our defense is going to stop Georgia. Georgia's got a backup quarterback. They are putting that under their pillow right now and sleeping so well.
Yeah.
That Georgia's got a backup quarterback playing right now.
Yeah.
And Georgia is healthy at the right time on the lines of scrimmage. That's what Georgia's built on. And so as the lines of scrimmage go, and Coach said it perfectly about Monroe Freething when he came in, that galvanized that line. That line started playing so much better, and you didn't see so many mistakes. They were able to put 2 and 3 and 4 plays together where they executed, and the offense was able to gain rhythm.
Right.
And you can see that. And so I feel like Georgia's built to win however they need to win. But in a game like this, let's forget everything else. And if Georgia's playing Oregon or Texas down the road, it doesn't matter. In a game like this, Georgia does the things that you think you do special. They do them better than you do. Now, do they do them every game? And if Notre Dame would have played Georgia's schedule, they might have found out that they don't do them every game either, because you're, like you said, when exactly you find out what you're about when you're in that hot water, and they haven't been in hot water like Georgia has.
No, go ahead. No, you go.
No, I was going to say, you got 3 games left. I hate to say it, but you play great defense. You ground and pound them to death in these next 3 games with running ETN, Frazier, and some Gunner Stockton with some play action, with some RPO. You play great, solid defense, and you suffocate these next 3 teams you play. It's not going to be, this awe-inspiring angelic football that we saw back when we beat, TCU 65-7. We're going to win these 3 ball games in gut wrenchers, 23-17s and 21-14s and 17-10s. Is what I see. It's what I feel. But to me, with these 3 games that are left, you play great defense, you play consistent great defense, and you just have a solid running game that is backed up by a 15 to 20 attempt game of just play action stuff. You can still vertically stretch if you want to every once in a while on 1st and 10. Throw some back shoulder, throw the slot fade like you did to Anthony Evans against Florida State. I have no problem with that. But to me, that solidarity is what's going to help staple Georgia for the next 3 games. Going back to what we're talking about, Notre Dame does have a really good – they're 2 inside linebackers, and Xavier Watts, that free safety, number 0. You're going to have to watch those guys. They're leading tacklers on the team, and I really – watching them on film, they play very good assignment. I mean, to me, Xavier fits – kind of Malachi Starks-esque. I think he's a little bit thicker than Malachi is, but he's all over the field, and that's something I want to see us take advantage of. USC, the Maava that we almost got from UNLV, he played for USC. He did a really good job against their secondary because they do like to play a lot of cover 1 with him in the middle of the field, but they also like to leave him out of the middle of the field and bring him downhill and run alleys because he's like a linebacker playing safety. So, we're going to have to see that as well, how we match up against that kid too, because he's definitely going to be on your film when you're watching the game. You're going to see 0 flying around. We got to take advantage of his aggressiveness and like USC did.
Smooch, I want to see if you agree with this. And a lot of times, as I would say, as a coaching staff or as a team, a program, you want to maximize what you do well. And if you hear coaches say all the time, it's not about them, it's about us. It's, we got to do us.
Right.
And I think and Coach just said this, is that the thing that makes Georgia have their highest ceiling and it makes them special, or it could in the next 3 games, is that potential, their defensive potential. It's as high as anybody left on their schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, I agree 100%, Troup. I think that when it comes down, when we're at the stage of the season that we're at, if you can make the game be you doing your best thing, then you're in good shape. Georgia gets into trouble when they have to do things that are not their best thing. As do all teams, yes. As do all teams, right? Right. That's what happened to us against Bama. We ended up in a spot where we just had to play air raid for a half and some fireworks, lost the game. If Georgia can make this about their players, about their athleticism, and about their size by just making it a dogfight, I like their chances against anybody. There's nothing against Notre Dame. I like them against anybody. If they can make this game played in a phone booth, I'll take them over anyone. And so it's possible, Troup Brinson, that this gunner insertion at starting quarterback is perhaps a touch more conducive to that style of play. And maybe they are, but it comes down to that defense. When I told you this, I don't remember when, I don't even think we were on a show at all when we were talking about it. When Georgia's defense puts it all together, I don't know anybody better. Period. They've got guys everywhere flying to the ball. The first half against Texas is one of the most perfect halves of defensive football I think I've ever seen, especially with what Texas was trying to do. And so I think that if Georgia can make this, hey, it's about our defense and it's about our big guys on the line and about our running backs and about our uber moxie quarterback, that's what Georgia is. If they can make the game about that, I like them against anybody, Coach.
Yes, you said it very well, and it comes down to the fact of that execution level because, I don't want to jump down this rabbit hole. I know we talked about it going into the show, but I hope we don't put a barometer on Gunnar Stockton's future just on this one game. Gunner's going to go in and he's going to try his best. We know he's all heart. But you're right. It's hard to say that the casual fan, to me, will look at this game as being sort of his stepping stone of either going, he's either all in or we don't have the right quarterback for our future. And I think that's a very poor attitude to have going into this game. We need to be very patient with what we see in Gunner this coming Wednesday. We need to evaluate some good things that he did, maybe but he doesn't have that learning curve like we got to see Carson Beck go through.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he's under this microscope of this one game. And I hate to say, let's say he goes out and we have an ugly win, and everybody's saying, well, is he the right quarterback for us? He's going to be the quarterback that wins the national championship for us. Barring injury or anything else, he is our quarterback. We've got to stand behind him, believe in him. No, the coaching staff is obviously, because to me, I'm yet to go back and think and criticize anything Coach Kirby Smart's going to do. He's going to put the best players on the field to help us have the best advantage to win a ball game. So if he's got Gunner in there and they're doing their job, they've obviously applied it, put in the scheme work forth these last month, and I'm ready to see what they put out on the field.
Love it.
Well, I think that what the coaches have seen over the past few weeks with Gunnar Stockton and what they know about him and what they've been able to install and how his grasp of it is and how he's looked in practice, well, it'll tell them if they're going to allow him to have the full playbook, or they're going to be really limited and try to just not make mistakes. And and that's a tough thing. But if you really believe in your defense and your running game, that could be a winning recipe for success. Or if you just said, well, he's ready, he's got it, we're going to let him play or run these same plays when running all year with his own style, and when some set plays that obviously are just catered towards his game style. But I'm interested most to see if they allow that. If you see him running some of the same plays or some of the plays where he's not all just a little short passes and outs and just hitting your tight end, and whether he's letting some plays develop and going through progressions and layering some passes. If I see him do that, I'm like, there's no limitations. The margin for error is a lot smaller though for Georgia, but it's still their style of play. If he has to be limited, and they're worried about him making mistakes because he hasn't been through all this, and that's really unfair, but he hasn't. And to be in this situation right now. And so I can see a Kirby Smart saying, let's just keep the handcuffs on him a little bit, but the game situations a lot of times will dictate that. And if Georgia comes out and runs the ball really well, it's going to make things so much more simple. I think that's the recipe for success, Smooch, Coach, is Georgia running the ball. I feel like defensively, they're getting healthy, and you're going to have TID and Kristen Miller and Warren Brinson and Stackhouse all up front. And then, I don't think Notre Dame's seen people like Mykel Williams playing on the edge, because he's a guy he's so powerful and has so many pass rush abilities too. I don't know if Jalen Walker, I don't know if this is a place for him to flash, him to shine, but there's lots of guys
we're going to find out, though.
We're going to find out. But I feel like if Georgia runs the ball really well, this game's going to be – they're going to be able to dictate everything they want to do in this ball game. I'm going to make my prediction, and you guys can weigh in as well. I got Georgia winning 27-13. It's going to be a close game, but Georgia's going to kind of have their – I guess be able to dictate the way the game goes and the pace it goes. It's going to be limited possessions. I don't feel like it's going to be a ton of possessions in this game, so you got to take advantage of that. And Georgia's also going to have a different punter, so we'll see how that plays out. Field position matters.
Yeah, especially in this game. Absolutely.
Can create really good field position opportunities for the Dogs with 27-13 Georgia.
27-13, I got it. I'm going to tell you this, back on your will Kirby Smart keep the handcuffs on Gunnar Stockton? He has about as good a chance to keep handcuffs on Gunnar Stockton as he did to get Keely Ringo to take a knee when he intercepted that ball against Alabama. Okay. Alphas are going to do alpha stuff. And he's going to go – we're behind him 100%, but he's going to go out there and be himself. And that could be great. It could be poetically horrible, but I think it'll be great. But yeah, so Troup, I look at this as a game where it is one of those games where you look at it and you say, Georgia's whipping these guys up front, and the score is only a 2 2-point, 3-point difference early on. I can really see that a 7-10 halftime or something like that, and then a late pulling away. Like I said, I'm going with my body blow thing. I just don't think they can trade body shots with Georgia. I've got 27-10.
Georgia Notre Dame has, when they have clashed, it has been very good, solid ball games. We go back to the national championship years of Herschel and Vince Dooley. We go to the Jake Fromm era, starting in South Bend and winning a 20-19 ball game, and then them coming to our house, beating them 23-17. So every game we have played, regardless of their abilities, it always seems to be really just a Warriors battle on the field. So I'm going to go ahead and take very much the same thing. I feel like there's going to be a lot of field goals exchanged, but we're going to at least get in the zone a couple of times. Probably going to kick, behind a very good field goal kicker. But I'm thinking something like 23-17, which, if I'm not mistaken, was the same score we beat them at home in Sanford Stadium. So I'm going to take that score again and say 23-17.
Coach's prediction is nostalgic. I like that.
He's going a route that Smooch always goes in these games. He's like, we're winning 23-10. They scored a late touchdown, made it look closer.
That's exactly right. They score once in garbage
That's what
time.
happened in that last game. Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Exactly.
I love it. So we all are, consensus is Georgia's going to move on and play the next team up. So yeah, unless something catastrophic happens, I feel I've got, the more time has passed, and maybe it happens every time we have a break between games, is I start feeling better and better and convince myself. But this is a team Georgia should win, and it doesn't mean that Notre Dame has to fall apart and not be a good team, but Georgia should be able to do what they do better than Notre Dame thinks they can do. What they really play in Georgia's game in a lot of ways. I just think Georgia can do it better. They have the horses.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. In my prognostication of how I think they're going to wear them down, Chauncey Bowens. Look for him to get a late carry and ice it there. Because after you are that beaten down from, Frazier holding on to the ball.
Yeah.
And doing his thing, and ETN doing his thing, and you'll even see a little Phillips, and then all of a sudden, here comes this tree trunk when you're already beaten down and tired. I'm going to say Chauncey Bowens with a late touchdown.
Wrapping this up, but what do we feel about these other games? The game Tuesday night, and we don't need to talk about Alabama, Michigan. That's a noon game on Tuesday, but
that's cute.
Let's get cute. What about this Boise State PSU team? Is that got any chance to be
I think it's got a chance to be I think it's got a chance to be a competitive game. I'm not.
All we've seen at Boise State, Smooches, highlights of Genty, running these big runs. We don't really know. I don't know, at least, what to expect from them in a 4-quarter game.
Well, I thought he was a good running back until they gave the Heisman to not him, so I guess he's not that good. But no. Anyway, I don't know. I can't figure Penn State out either. I was more impressed with Penn State's good loss against Oregon, I think, than I was anything else they've done this year.
It's true.
And so I really don't know what to think about them. But I think that usually on these stages, the team with usually on these stages, if everything's equal, the team with the brand is going to win. Penn State's the brand. So I'd take Penn State if I had to. I can see Boise State easily pulling an upset, though.
I've actually got Boise State beating Penn State on my bracket because I think Genty's going to run up and down the field on them, honestly. Penn State,
nice.
Tyler Warren, number 44, is their go-to guy. If you can figure out a way, especially with their defense that's very scrappy, to be able to, bracket him and be able to keep him on it. Because, you haven't watched them do anything except for the good loss against Oregon, like you said. They played SMU in their first round of the playoffs where you still don't have a barometer, even a pulse on what kind of team they actually are. And there's so many things with that game that makes it look like it was a JV cult team out there against Penn State. And I sit there and think to myself, but there was one play in particular, and I don't know if it had gone any other way, but they were on 4th down trying to convert, and they ran a naked bootleg, and he threw it to the tight end on the 1-yard line, and he threw it behind him. If they complete that pass and go in and score on their first series instead of turning the ball over on downs, does that change anything? Him throwing the 2 pick sixes obviously killed him, but I think Genty, who is the Heisman winner to me in my eyes, I think he should have won the Heisman, is going to do a really good job against Penn State. I think Penn State's going to have their hands full in trying to stop him, slow him down. If they do, we could see a more competitive game, but I want to see them beat Penn State. It's the reason why I've got Boise over the top of them.
Nice.
Come on.
Because I'd love to see
Coaches,
Georgia with Notre Dame, and then I would love to see a turnaround. We need to play them Boise State Broncs. I want to get back after them after that humiliating defeat in those ugly ass uniforms that we were in back in the day. That we opened up with there. Oh
when
my God!
Your mom dresses you up and then you go get your butt kicked in front of everybody.
Yeah, but here I am talking about winning ball games just based off our uniform wear. But
you're completely right.
Boise State and get back to Genty and but whoever we do play, I think we've got a good matchup regardless. Whoever we do play, if we can take care of the Irish this Wednesday.
No kidding. It might get easier in that semifinal game. It should be, actually. I think Notre Dame is a little better team than either of those.
Sure.
Even though they play a style, I think that leads right into what Georgia does well. Even though folks are going to say, well, who are you talking about? What about Haynes King? I'm like, I don't think that Riley Leonard is Haynes King. No. So I don't. Maybe he does some of the similar things. But anyway, moving on. Texas and ASU is an interesting game because I watched a little bit of Texas, watched a little bit of ASU, and that was a game I thought that if Texas doesn't come buttoned up, the ASU can give them some issues.
100%. I said this. I don't remember. I may have said it just to you, or may have said it on something of record. But I said if I had to pick an upset, because there's not a lot of some of these teams. There's not really. It's hard to pick an upset because there's not one. But ASU could sneak up on a Texas team that wasn't prepared. A Texas team that's looking down the road. A Texas team that's looking at how hard their bracket is after they get done with ASU. A Texas team that lost to Georgia twice. All those things can sometimes come together. I think if both teams play their game, Texas wins the game. And it could even be a blowout in Texas's favor. But if I was going to pick an upset, there's going to be one in this next round. I would say ASU over Texas, Coach.
Me as well.
Coach
is going with Boise State. We're going with ASU.
Yeah.
Coach Dillon, no, I've got Arizona State picked too. I've got
come on,
Coach Dillenbeck and Scatterboo, man. I love his.
Just like saying Scatterboo.
I'm gonna tell you this: when I watched him against Iowa State, to be able to line down, they were lined up in pro formations with a true fullback running ISO power. Almost like a veer read option, and then they were just tossed like a guard, where they pull the guard and look like tall sweep, but they're hitting up the side. I'm sitting there just salivating. I haven't, and then, the defense, the Iowa State defense, they're pretty, as far as taking on that kind of deal, I'm sure they do. They look like they get in the weight room too. But it was so just eye-pleasing to see stuff under center being run that way. It got me excited about almost this OG type of football. So I'm going to take them. Texas has got a very good defense. We know that. They're very good up front. They move very well. But I think Scatterboo is going to give them everything they want. I think it's not going to be a high-scoring game, but I think Arizona State beats Texas. Sorry, Ghost out there.
Love it, man.
40 Acre Vibe. I'm on his podcast a few times. He's a big Texas guy, but I'm gonna pick Arizona State to beat them boys.
Mike Allstott has shown back up in college football.
He is a cannonball. You know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of that cat, the Cody Schrader kid from Missouri.
Yeah,
I think he's a little bit thicker than him in the legs, but he reminds me. He runs like Cody Schrader.
He's got a similar center of balance to Cody Schrader.
Yeah, and that's what makes him a good running back. Kids don't want to tackle nowadays. They don't wear enough equipment to absorb any shock anymore. They try to go up and do that hurricane crap just to ring around you and try to rile you down. And if you got a guy that's got a good center of gravity, you just keep moving them legs, they'll fall off of you.
I love it.
And the marquee game, I guess, if you look at non-Georgia games, is that OSU. Based on what Ohio State did last week, and they looked so good, and then Oregon, who beat them in a close game at Oregon earlier this year. That's a game that that's going to get the most people eyeballs on that ball game. So I'm really curious about, is that just a pick 'em? How do you guys feel about that game?
Well, I say if it's a pick 'em, I go with the coach, and I take Dan Lanning all day. That's seriously. That's if it's a pick 'em, I go with coach, and Dan Lanning is an actual football coach. And then just for men, Ryan Day, no. So, no, I like Oregon again in that game. I cannot imagine, and I could be wrong, I cannot imagine Ryan Day losing to a coach and then figuring it out and coming back and beating that same coach. That sounds so out of character for him. I think that last week Ohio State was the best team in the country. They did that for 1 week. I've got Oregon all the way in this one.
Man, I've got to interject. I'm going to blame Ohio State looked really good, but I blame Tennessee for that. Tennessee made Ohio State look too good, honestly, to tell you the truth. But when you're out at Pasadena in the Rose Bowl, that's right in Oregon's backyard there. Ohio State's got to travel across. They typically do play well in the Rose Bowl, but I'm going to take Dan Lanning all day long. Until he has to play us, I'm going to take Dan Lanning. I like him as a coach. I think he's doing great things out at Oregon. We talk about beating the same team twice. I know Ohio State's going to come back with everything they've got to try to beat this team, but I agree with you. When it comes down to it, I think Ryan Day's going to get out coached again. Everybody's excited as a Buckeye right now because Tennessee made them look so damn good up in the queue. And now all of a sudden they're going to go out west, out to Pasadena, where Oregon has to drive basically about 2 hours to get down to the stadium. And I think we're going to have some explosive fireworks in that game.
Yes.
I think Oregon does a really good job of not only beating them, I think they embarrass them.
Come on.
At least by 2 touchdowns.
I think I love that. I think we all are going to root for Dan Lanning, of course. I don't have a great feel for this game. I think it's going to be a close game. It can go either way. There's so many factors involved, and it's tough to win. Both these teams know that it's tough to win, and so whoever plays the best, I think both of these teams are very equipped to win this ball game.
But doesn't it make you sense though to think of it as a fan of his not? Think about Ohio State fans the week they played Michigan. Now think about what they feel like now after they play Tennessee.
That's true.
That is such an up and down roller coaster. That to me just tells me that Tennessee screwed us all by letting Ohio State look so freaking good.
I don't know what I would love to have been a fly on the wall when Tennessee strategized that game with their coaches and how they prepared their players because
they finally exploited their defensive secondary. Tennessee's not got a very good secondary, and Ohio State took advantage of that. They finally got exploited for one of the first times I've seen all year long where you've got a playmaker out there. Jeremiah Smith, and they just threw balls up to him. They isolated their corners and got good one-on-one matchups
and then you hear this week that Squirrel White entering the transfer portal.
Every one of the
Mike
receivers.
Matthews, who didn't play much this year, and maybe he's not the wide receiver they anticipated him yet, and he's going to hit the portal, it looks like, unless they can convince him otherwise. And there's rumors that Miami is trying to induce Nico to come down there and then play in that system. Both very quarterback-friendly systems. But you just wonder what's going on, that kind of loss. And, Tennessee should feel good about their season. But, their season has been based on beating Alabama the past two of the past 3 seasons anyway.
Right.
But, what's going on? Is Heupel's seat getting a little hotter? The reason it wouldn't be is because they saw what it's like when you fire a coach who's got you in the conversation, and now it's tough. Those things don't happen by accident. So it's interesting to follow Tennessee in this offseason.
It is. The Nico thing is really interesting because I don't know if there's any truth to it. I know Nico's not happy. You can tell by his own Instagram post that he's not happy because he had just been coronated, right? This is the best player in college football. We saw it time and time again. And, that's not how it works anymore. Sometimes these great players you have for a year or two, it's not like, oh, this guy's committed to us. He's going to be in the record books for us one day because he loves Tennessee so much. No, you got him there with money, and you may lose him with money.
But I was going to say this. You think about it, there's 8 million reasons why he should stay because with his stock and what he did this year, is he worth going to another team for NIL purposes?
That's my point.
Worth that same $8 million that he's got at Tennessee.
Who would pay him? That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, who's lining up to pay him $10 million to switch schools? That's the part I don't get.
He's a weird quarterback. You can say he doesn't have enough experience, but it was in a quarterback-friendly system, and there's certain things he does that look so good. But it comes to the point of leading the offense and making those plays and there's something that's not there yet. It may not ever be there, but it's not there yet. It certainly doesn't match up with all the accolades and all the, everything that was pushed. And Fornelli, of course, was saying that he was the best quarterback in college football and a Heisman.
And now we've got to hear about how great Ohio State is because
thanks,
of all
Tennessee.
of that.
Thanks,
Tennessee.
Appreciate
all
that.
right. We can't wait. I doubt we're going to do it's going to be a late game Wednesday night. I doubt we're going to do a rapid reaction.
We may try. It just may never make it to air.
Sometimes you guys have heard that lets you know, folks, we're fans and we're going to enjoy the game first, and then we'll talk about it later.
Games are meant to be fun, people.
That's right. I do appreciate you, Coach Hayes. That's Coach Hayes Huddle for coming on tonight and helping us out. And
My pleasure.
We'd rather have anybody else before a big game like
Hey, Coach,
this.
you've got some breakdowns coming up, right, in the next day or two? What you got?
I do. I just put out one with Gunner Stockton against Florida State last year, just to show some things that I'd like to see them mirror on Wednesday. That's doing really well right now, hitting pretty hard on YouTube, almost up to about 10,000 views on that one, which I'm excited about because I'm getting my stuff out a little bit to a lot more people. I'm about to do a defensive breakdown. I'm actually getting it ready to go out for tomorrow, and then there'll be an offensive breakdown that'll be going out on Tuesday. So you should see a defensive breakdown, Notre Dame against USC Indiana tomorrow, and then the offensive breakdown on Tuesday. So look forward to that.
Fantastic.
Can't miss that. Don't miss it. And as always, folks, you can find us on the Dawgs Show Pod, Twitter, YouTube, of course, if you want to see our beautiful faces, and TikTok as well. We've had some good content this week, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of good content going forward. We've been holding back just a bit because Notre Dame fans it was a little something doesn't feel right. They're like kind of give it to them like we give it to other SEC brethren because they just don't.
It's
know.
like stealing a watch off a dead guy. It's just not. It doesn't feel right. Yeah,
it doesn't feel right. We'll wait on that. But enjoy being here, and we can't wait for the game Wednesday night for Coach Hayes and Smooch Moncrief. This is Troup Brinson saying so long and go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
This is the Dawgs Show with Troup and Smooch.
It's the dog show. It's the dog show. It's the dog show. It's the dog show.